Let's get creative! Today we're going to be creating an abstract love heart artwork inspired by the artist Jim Dine. We're going to be learning 3 new techniques, including starting with the background with a dry brush blend. We'll be using a sponge for that section. Then we're going to be adding some cool texture, and then you get to draw your design. We'll be painting it in with a solid color, adding some highlights and shading. The supplies I'm using today include a canvas panel, acrylic paint in red, yellow, blue, and black and white, 3 brushes in a large flat, medium flat, and small round brush. I'm going to be using a toothbrush, cardboard, a plastic knife, and a sponge. These are all fun ways of getting cool texture. Make sure you have a clean bucket of water. Get your large brush and let's get her wet. I like to dab it on the paper towel so it's not too wet. Now let's just start with the solid primary colors. We're going to be blocking out sections of your canvas using some solid colors and some fun mixed colors. I'm even going to throw in a little color theory lesson. So we're going to have fun mixing secondary colors and tertiary. Here I'm just painting with blue. I'm going to paint right up to that yellow. But what I don't want is to see a straight line. So the first technique we're going to learn today is a dry brush blend or using a dry sponge to blend. I did dry my brush off completely, but it still had a tiny bit of moisture. So now I'm going to take my sponge and I'm just going to use that dry edge and do tiny little swirls to blend the blue into the yellow. See if you can create a new color. See how we got rid of that line in between? That's called our dry brush blend. This dry brush blend is a really good technique to do when you're trying to create a smooth transition between colors. For instance, if you were painting a sunset and you wanted to have a really smooth blend from that red to orange to yellow, you just dry your brush, rinse it out completely, that's important, dry it off, and then you can use that dry brush, or to make it a really soft effect, grab your dry sponge and do a few little swirls. Now we're going to start mixing some secondary colors. What color are you going to get when you mix yellow and red? To lighten it up, I add a little bit of white. Makes it a pretty medium orange. Add a little bit more yellow if you'd like to make it brighter. Notice how when I added the color onto my brush, I didn't dip it right into the middle. That way we don't contaminate or get the entire color of yellow dirty from dipping red into it. So instead I just used the side of the color to dip my brush in. So I just dirtied that one little edge. See if you can try to keep your paint colors really clean throughout this session. Now I'm just dabbing over the blue. I'm blending orange into the blue, and when you mix complementary colors or colors that are across each other on the color wheel, it creates a neutral color. So notice the blend between the blue and the orange is like a gray. I'm just going to clean off my brush and try to get all that color off. Blending it into the white. Now let's mix a new secondary color. Notice how I just dip my brush on the side of that blue. Yellow and blue makes green. So here we go. And I put that green next to the red because red and green are actually complementary colors. So looking at a color wheel, you'll notice that red and green, they look good with each other. They're across the color wheel. We call them complementary. Again, when you mix two complementary colors together, you're going to get that neutral color. So now I'm just starting to blend that green into the red by dabbing, using a pretty much dry brush here, but you can also grab your sponge and do some little swirls. To add a deeper texture, go ahead and just dab your brush around those edges and get a little stippling effect. That'll allow the green to be on top of the red without mixing it. So the last secondary color we're gonna mix is starting with blue, getting some red, and mixing your new color. What'd you get? So far it's a deep violet or a deep purple. I'm gonna mix in a little bit of white to lighten that up. It's a very pretty dark purple. I'm just gonna be painting the rest of that corner, getting all of that purple off on the edge, blending it in. Trying to achieve really soft lines or that smooth transition between colors. See if you can do a really smooth edge, or try to get rid of the edge rather and do a smooth transition. I'm going to add some of this purple into the yellow just to get a different texture happening. That really bright yellow just seemed to be a little bit too intense for the corner. So I'm going to tone it down by adding its complementary color to kind of neutralize the yellow. See if you can get a really cool texture using the edge of the brush. Now we're going to be mixing up a new set of colors. So I started with green and I'm adding that yellow. This is called a tertiary or an intermediate color. When you mix a primary with a secondary, you get a medium intermediate color. Now I want you just to have fun mixing your own new colors, blocking out big sections of color, and really trying to achieve that smooth blend. Having that nice transition between different colors using a dry brush or your dry sponge. Have fun, guys, and finish your entire canvas blocking out with color. Once you're done, we're going to let that dry for a couple minutes, and I'm going to teach you the next layer 2 technique. For the second layer, we're going to be using some fun techniques using edges of cardboard. So here I have a piece of cardboard and I'm tearing off one side of it, finding that corrugated or ribbed section. That adds a really cool texture. Or you can just cut a rectangle piece of cardboard or even use some thick cardstock. I'm also going to use a toothbrush. Make sure it's an old one. Or if you have a plastic knife, that adds a cool texture. And then I'm going to be using a flat tray for mixing. and for loading my brush. Make sure your background is completely dry before adding this next layer. I'm going to be starting with some white, using the edge of my cardboard, and I'm going to dab it into my red. And now I'm going to do some scraping techniques. Have fun doing different techniques of scraping, dragging, dabbing, and pulling. Notice how I dip my cardboard into a color and then I dab it into the section of my palette. That's called offloading. When you offload your cardboard or your brush, it means you won't have a lot of globbed up paint onto the cardboard, so it won't leave a big splat of paint. You just want some nice thin texture and drag it across your canvas. Have fun mixing some new colors. And focus on adding some brighter colors on top of darker background colors. And add some darker colors on top of the lighter background colors. So you have that nice contrast. Here I'm just offloading my colors, but I'm also mixing them together just slightly. So when I start to do that drag, I'm going to have a really pretty aqua turquoise color. The artist we're inspired by, Jim Dine, uses plenty of layers, lots of cool texture, back and forth with the brush and with different materials to create really unique marks. Abstract art is awesome for exploring different techniques, so I want you to grab some fun objects like an old toothbrush, load your brush, make sure you offload it so it's not too gluggy, and here I even use my paper towel. And I'm just starting to tap in some color, exploring the different marks that I can get using that toothbrush. You may have a really old sponge or maybe a plastic fork you want to incorporate and see what that does. Whatever you have at home that's old, and your parents don't mind if you get a little paint on it, make sure you load it and then offload it and have fun making new marks. I'm going to try this corrugated cardboard now. Just going to explore that ribbed part of the cardboard. See what happens when I dab and when I swipe. The pattern I'm making, or following rather, is straight and horizontal lines, almost like I'm doing lots of little crisscrosses around the canvas. I don't want to block up too much of that background and the pretty soft blend, but I do want to add another bit of texture in the back. It's also fun to scrape off the texture that you add. So notice how I flipped over my cardboard. And here I'm going to use my toothbrush to kind of blend in that white. And then coming in with black to tone it down. Tap, tap, tap away. Now make sure you have fun doing this part and adding lots of fun little marks in the background. When you're done, take a step back, have a look at it, and let that background layer dry before we move on to the next section. Lastly, make sure you rotate your canvas. Your artwork looks really cool in all different directions. When you're adding new colors, you may notice that your canvas looks really cool turned on the side, or maybe upside down. So go ahead and rotate your canvas throughout this process and have fun doing new marks in new places, making sure it's really interesting in that background. I'll see you when it's dry so we can do our third layer. The artist Jim Dine uses the love heart as his main object in most of his artwork. So I'm going to be following along with his inspiration by making a large red love heart. So grab your small round brush, that pointy one, and decide what shape you're going to do. And I want you to roll your brush into the paint and pull it away as you're rolling so it keeps that nice tip on it. Go ahead and draw your outline using sketching lines so you create the perfect shape or the perfect size that you like. Once you get that outline done, go ahead and grab your large brush and fill it in. I'm using a solid red color, but you can choose any solid color for your object. Fill it in completely using that large brush. I even put a tiny bit of moisture on my brush to make sure that the paint glides on top of that second layer. But don't use too much water, otherwise it'll be really runny and get really messy and mix with that background layer. Once you have the entire object painted, now it's time to add some fun highlights and some shadows to make it look more interesting. I'm going to start with my black and start adding that really soft shadow on the left edge of that love heart, going along with the curve of the edge. Now, if you have a different object, you can choose where you put your shadow, possibly on the bottom to show that it has weight, and then the highlights could go on the top. But for my love heart, I'm using the right side for those pretty white highlights and the left side for the dark shadows. Now I'm just going to brush my white into the red, back and forth strokes to slightly blend, but I don't want to lose my white. The more strokes you do on your canvas, the more the colors are going to blend together. So if you want your white to blend in with that background color, the more strokes you need to do. Stroke, stroke, stroke until it's nice and blended. But if you want it to stay nice and chunky and you want some of that white to stand really bright, then don't put too many strokes. Once you blend the edges a little bit, smoothing in that highlight and the shadow, I want you to grab your round baby bear brush and sign it. I'm going to use black, roll my round brush into the black with a little bit of moisture, and sign my name in the corner. And now you are complete. I hope you enjoyed this abstract love heart artwork inspired by Jim Dine. I'd love to see your work. Go ahead and tag us at The Seed CW or hashtag The Seed CW so we can see your efforts. Awesome job today. See you next time.